My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it. Do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and beer.
Years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hey everybody, welcome back here to another episode of Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. Thank you all so much for all the support and all the love. I'm currently in the middle of a giveaway on my Instagram page. If you don't follow me on Instagram, head over to Instagram, search the Raspy Dispatcher, and follow. I do a lot of giveaways and a lot of community engagement on that page. So definitely hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any of the future upcoming giveaways that we'll put out there on that Instagram page, also on Facebook as well. For today, our guest is a current Rochester, New York dispatcher, an Amazon best-selling author, here to talk about their experience in this line of work, as well as their new book, Nothing Good Happens After Midnight, Confessions of a 911 Dispatcher. Here with us today is Phillip. Hi, Phillip. How are you?
There we go.
Oh, hey, Phillip. How you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful. I hit the play button, but I'm good. I'm very well. How about you?
You know, technology is hard. Let me tell you, like...
It was prompting me. It was right up there prompting me, but I was like, I don't know.
You know, I honestly don't know what it looks like on your guys' end when I add you in. So it's good to know there's a prompt.
There's a prompt.
But, you know, like it's so funny when we think about technology, right? Because we use it so heavily in our line of work as dispatchers. And it always like blows my mind when I talk to folks that have been doing this for so long. And they're doing it like pre-CAD, pre-Excel spreadsheets. Like,
Yes.
I don't think I could do this. Yeah. And like, what's a pen? I don't know what that is. Like, who has a pen on them? I don't.
No idea. No idea.
Like paper? What's that?
I look old, but I've only been there 13 years, so I've had CAD. I'm good. I've had CAD.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into public safety.
So it's really a funny story. So I spent 20 years working at the Eastman Kodak Company. And the last 11 years of it, I was in the legal department. I was a paralegal working in employment law, handling investigations of cases of discrimination and unemployment insurance. And for the unemployment insurance, I would actually, I wasn't a lawyer, but I got to partake in these hearings as a lawyer and represent the company, asking questions of the witnesses and of the people that were applying for unemployment. So it was a really cool job. And a lot of times I felt like Matlock. Like I'd be like, isn't it true? You know, that kind of a thing.
In the mirror, game day, you're like, all right, here are my questions.
I always wore my powder blue suit. It was great. But it was a fantastic job. But like, I don't know if you're aware, but at the time when I first got into Kodak, there was 64,000 employees. And by the time I was laid off, there was 3,000 employees. Wow. So Kodak just took a dive. They just took a dive. And I'm like 39 years old, and I'm like, where am I going now? So I sent my resume out everywhere. And the Monroe County, or the city of Rochester, they're kind of together. I applied for a job at 911 as a dispatcher, also as a telecommunicator, which is the person that takes the phone calls. And they called me in. I went for an interview. Then I had to go through the background checks and all that kind of thing. And next thing you know, I'm a 911 dispatcher. Totally different world, from wearing a suit and going to depositions and court hearings to being on the phone with these emergency phone calls and dispatching fire and ambulance and police to these calls. Culture shock, just complete culture shock. So I've been there 13 years. So 20 years at Kodak, 13 years so far at the Emergency Communications Department in Rochester, New York.
That's awesome. So did you find like when you were first making the transition to being a dispatcher that your questions felt like you were back in court? Like,
Yeah.
what
Well, I feel like
is
that
your
was
address?
good training almost, you know,
Yeah.
because I was used to asking questions.
Mhm.
What I did find is when I talk with people now, though, and they want to tell me a story,
Mm.
I don't have the patience for it.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, come on.
Yeah, no, and for folks out there who haven't experienced sometimes I have to tell my fiance, I'll look at her and go, you got to get to the point. And she knows because we've had the conversation. I'm like, I love you. I want to hear your story, but I spent 12 hours listening to people walk around with the point, you know, my wallet's gone, you know, like that's the point. They're like, well, I went out with my friends last night. We went to this bar, but then we went to this other bar. And then it's like, what happened? Like, why are we talking right now?
You get it. But yes, the job definitely did, in a sense, prepare me. The funny thing is when I first started, after training and I hit the floor, everybody at 911 was 100% sure that I was a spy. That the city planted me to spy on them.
That is hilarious. And what did that look like? They just like walk by you, like raise their eyebrows, slip notes.
They told me. They said, you're a spy. Do you know what it feels like to be confronted as a brand new guy? You're a spy for the city of Rochester, aren't you? No, I'm not.
In your powder blue suit on the first day, they're like, all right,
that was a prop joke. I don't have a powder blue suit.
That is hilarious. I would have played into that. I would just be like wearing glasses and sunglasses inside and just like walk up to desk and just sit there with a notepad, not writing anything.
Every once in a while I would turn to somebody and go.
Door opens, 007 theme song plays as you're entering slowly to set up at your desk.
Exactly. It's like you were there.
Oh my God, that's so funny. So what kind of dispatch do you do? Do you do police, fire, medical?
So when I was hired, it was fire EMS. Mm-hmm. And I had wanted the police side because when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a police officer, like most people.
Yeah.
My eyesight is super bad, and there was no real cosmetic surgery when I was a young kid.
Yeah.
So I couldn't become a police officer. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of bummed when I got the fire EMS side. However, I love it. I absolutely love it. Eventually, I was promoted. I took a couple of tests, and I did go over onto the police side. So I was doing all three. But I found that the police side was a lot more complicated than the fire side, a lot more constant than the fire side. And it was making me a little apprehensive. So I stepped back and I just do fire in EMS.
And let me tell you, that is a tough dispatching role. I've said it on this podcast multiple times. I have no interest in the fire EMS side of things because taking someone who's already frantic, when I think about taking someone who's frantic, like let's say who's been involved in a shooting, whether they saw it or they know who was hit or, whatever the situation is, I feel like I can take that person, get what I need from them, and provide them the assistance they need because I don't need to get them to physically do anything. All they need to do is calm down just enough to answer my questions.
Right.
But I feel like with the fire EMS side, you are getting someone to de-escalate and then do something. And that's just so tough, like for me in my head and when I transfer to fire, because that's my favorite thing to do, transfer to fire. That's your guys' stuff, right back over. We'll see you there. But you go take this call now,
But see, that's just it. Both sides really are different. And both sides really are complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And the few calls I have to like hang on and listen to see if we have to go, it's just like you're trying to get this person to yank their loved one off a bed to do CPR on them or forbid their
Yeah.
child is choking, like
Oh,
this. Like,
kid calls.
yeah.
Kid calls are the worst. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
I've had ladies where my husband's too big. I can't get him off the chair. And I'm like, grab his feet and yank him off the chair. It's
Yeah.
okay if he's not breathing and he hits the floor hard. Yeah, you're not hurting him.
Yeah.
But to get somebody to do that, it's tough. It's tough.
It's so tough. It's so tough. So what would you say it was like in the beginning for you, like doing this job, making this transition, getting into this whole new wide world of dispatching and first responder? Like, what did it look like for you in the beginning?
Well, it's tough because I'm sure it's funny because I've watched all of your podcasts, so we've covered all of this. However, the radio ear is one of the toughest things to get.
Yeah.
And I would listen to scanners at home, and they're clearer. They are much clearer than when you have the headset on.
Oh yeah, I hate a playback. It just gaslights you. A playback,
yes,
a radio playback. I'm like, they sounded terrible. Da da da. Come listen. And you're like, oh no, that sounded clear. It didn't sound like that earlier.
I had when I went first. I'm first certified, right? So I'm sitting on the fireside, and we have an automatic alarm, and engine 16 says, engine 16's on scene, 2-story commercial building. Nothing showing. We'll be investigating. I said, engine 16 on location. Nothing showing. You'll be on vacation, right? Vacation. So then I do a slow turn to see who heard in the pod. They all heard because I'm the new guy, so they're listening anyway. And they're like, did you just tell engine 16 they're on vacation? And I'm like, I certainly did.
They like lift off their helmet and they have like a Mai Tai with the like looking for fire.
They're limboing and So there was a lot to there was a lot to becoming a dispatcher. So the training, the working with the people, the listening to the radio, the understanding the completely new language that I had no experience with, the crazy hours. I've been on midnights for 13 years, but at the beginning that was rough. The learning curve went on for at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Gosh, and I find I'm still learning, especially since I've lateraled to a new agency. And I've worked day shift the last 4 months. So we do like 4-month cycles. So I got forced onto day shift because now I'm back down at the bottom in seniority. So I got forced onto day shift. So, and then I signed up for my next shift cycle in January for day shift as well because it's weekends off. And I was like, I mean, I'm already working days. I might as well get some weekends off, right?
Sure.
But I find that when you're working on day shift, it's such a different beast than night shift because I'm like, leaf blowers, like who we deal with leaf blowers, or like someone called in about immigration paperwork needing a background check through our department, and I was like, you mean like light skin? Like I don't like what are you talking about? So then I had to like let me ask somebody. They're like, oh, I think it's the records. They like run and make sure we don't have any history. I'm like, oh, okay, but you're just constantly learning like these new things that just no one's calling about immigration paperwork at midnight. Like they're not, no one's calling about leaf blower. Well, I mean, I guess they could, but that rarely happens at midnight.
The 3 shifts are all different.
Yeah.
There's different animals on all 3 shifts.
Oh my God.
I have enough seniority. I could go to days anytime I want.
Don't do it.
I don't want them.
I'm gonna try to swing for swings next shift cycle, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I definitely think my fiance prefers the day shift life, but man, I'm like by 9 o'clock, I'm like on the couch, like you're tired. I'm like, I'm tired.
It's a long day.
So let's talk about, your new book, Nothing Good Happens After Midnight. What inspired you to write it? I love seeing dispatchers, doing the things that they love and putting it and connecting it with dispatch and throwing it out into the world in whatever way, shape, or form they find joy in. So like what brought this all about?
So I am a writer, and even before I was working at 911, I've had books published. This
Cool.
this is actually my 30th
Wow.
30th book published. It's my first nonfiction book.
Okay.
I write horror, I write mystery, I write science fiction, fantasy, romance. I've got a romance novel out there. But from day one, when I started at 911, I said to myself, "Oh my goodness, this is a book." And so I kept an open Word document and just recorded stuff.
Oh, you can say shit. Don't worry about it.
I recorded shit from day one.
Wow.
Calls, interactions on the floor, everything. And so I'm 13 years in, and I'm like, I feel like I have enough to make a book about, not necessarily, it's all about 911, but it's also a book about balance, because the one thing I found that I've struggled with the most is balance with working holidays, weekends, overnights, being a divorced dad, 3 kids, family, friends. How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it, especially when most people have normal weekends and evenings off? How do you keep everything in check? And I was not doing a good job at it. So I decided to write this book finally. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, you can't write a book about 911. Management will get mad." And I'm like, it's not about management. It's not about anything anybody did wrong in my department. That book is coming when I retire.
Hey, wait till you see my reels when I'm not connected to a department.
Trust me, that book will be coming. But this book is really, I think, about, and it's a great book for dispatchers, and it's a great book for TCCs. And I say dispatchers, but when I say dispatchers, I mean dispatchers and TCCs interchangeably. We work crazy hours. We take crazy calls. We deal with some surreal instances that people, okay, we're not first responders in the sense that we're the first on the scene, but we are the first responders first responding. We're the first ones there. I've taken enough calls that have left me emotionally scarred, as I'm sure you have, as I'm sure many people have.
Yeah.
And then you go home and people say, "Oh, how was work?" And you just want to mow the lawn, or you just want to do something, right?
Yeah.
And I felt this book was important, not necessarily for dispatchers, but for the family and the friends of people who don't get it, or they get it, but they're not exactly sure what's going on. And that's what this book is for. It's for those people, so they can go, "Oh, this is why when my husband comes home or my wife comes home, they don't want to talk about their day because they were doing CPR instructions for a 2-year-old who didn't make it." And so the book is light in a sense that I've got a lot of humorous things in it, but it's deep and it's also dark. And I decided this is the time to write it. This is the time to write it. You just feel that this is the time to write it. And so I did. And the reception has been phenomenal.
It's so interesting that that's kind of where you went with it, the balance, because I do think that's something that first responders in general, right, not just dispatchers, police, fire, EMS, doctors, anyone who's working with trauma for long hours. I mean, we can even go into lawyers who are dealing with these cases.
Sure.
Look at these images, things like that. There is often a hard time balancing our work lives and our personal lives.
Yeah.
And being able to acknowledge the funny, because there is a lot of funny
A lot of fun. A lot of
in
fun.
the world of first responding and 911 dispatchers. I mean, we get every aspect of the human being calling us,
Right.
composed, irrational, just unrealistic, distraught. I mean, it's all over the board. So I think we do acknowledge that. But then the hard stuff comes. And it's
Right.
like, how do we work on that with us without giving trauma to our partners and family and friends by just sharing with them, right? So
Right.
in a sense, we want to protect ourselves, protect our loved ones. Like, you didn't hear it. I don't want you to have to hear it or know about it or this and that. But at the same time, we still need people, right? We still
Right.
need people who get it. So the fact that this book was written for us, by us, it can be a tool for those who are trying to help folks get it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. You've nailed it. You've nailed it. I know you said fiance earlier. I don't know if you said it in the podcast or when we were talking earlier, but that's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have personally destroyed tens and tens of relationships. I'm terrible at them. I'm with a great girl now. However, but I think a lot of it comes from you don't open up. It's hard to open up to somebody somebody who's got a regular 9-to-5 job, doing something normal, which is great. But to tell them that, I gave CPR instructions to an old woman who died in front of the refrigerator and her husband was 90 years old and could barely do CPR instructions. How do you explain that? How do you explain that? And so to find somebody that can feel that with you and work that with you. So I'm very happy for you, and I wish you guys all the best of luck.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, but the thing is, we've had the conversations, right? Like early on, and I've had people I've dated before where I've told them, even like when I was going through the academy, and I was like, I gotta study. Like, if you're coming over to hang out, like TV's on and I'm studying. Like, we're not partying, we're not doing anything else. Like,
right.
I gotta study, and there's a disconnect. They don't understand, or well, you seem so quiet. You don't want to talk. You just want to watch TV. Like, yeah, I've talked all day.
Right.
All day I have talked to people, and not nice people and not happy people, not people who are having wonderful days,
Right.
People who are cussing me out, or, their loved one is harmed in some way, or they've been harmed in some way. And sometimes, I just want to put some show Grey's Anatomy episode season 1 that I watched 400,000 times and just let it play.
I
and
watched
then,
that.
Yeah, I love Grey's,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But it is definitely reality. And I think for folks who are, in this line of work and are listening, you definitely have to have those conversations with your people, whoever your people are. I always tell my partner, like, it's not personal. Like, some days I don't want to talk. I don't want to hear about your day. I don't want you to hear about mine. I just want to be.
Yeah.
And that's enough,
Well, okay. So, and for a lot of people, that's hard for them to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why the book is important.
Exactly.
That's why the book is important, because it sounds insensitive. I don't want to hear about your day. I don't want to hear about my day. Don't call me on the phone. Text me. I don't want to take another phone call. People don't get that. This book, I think, explains it. We are burnt. We're burnt. Even after an 8-hour shift, which I never work, it's always 12. After a 12-hour
8 hours.
You can't take them. You just can't take. My mother will call me and I'll be like, Mom, text me.
Oh my.
You know how to text.
I literally, when we started talking about it, I was like, I got to tell him about my dad. I love my dad. That man is just amazing. Support system, wonderful. But if I send him a text, hey, Dad, what color's the sky? he'll call me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's blue. Like, why are you texting me? I'm like, Dad, if you don't just send me the text back.
Just answer it at a time.
And he's like, I'm gonna call you. And we always like get into little 415s over. I'm like, Dad, that's could have been a text. Like, this could have been an email. You know what I mean? Like that whole meme thing. And he's like,
Oh yeah.
I don't care. I'm gonna call you. And I'm like, okay.
That's
forever gonna be our argument. Like
they don't get it though. They don't get it.
Yeah.
Or I work midnights, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my brother will call me at like 10 in the morning.
Oh, that's no.
Do you know when I call him back?
Midnight?
At 3. I'm like, hey Pete, I'm at work. What's going on? I'm sleeping, Phil. Yeah, you're sleeping. I know you're sleeping.
Hilarious. It's so true. My best friend, I have my phone on like it lives on Do Not Disturb just because I was working nights for so long. And they know my phone's always on Do Not Disturb, so they'll like call me twice, and like the phone will ring through. And I'll think like, is this a life or death emergency? And they'll be like, well, no. And I'm like, then what are you doing? Like, what is happening? What is happening right now? Why are we talking? Leave a message. I'll get back to you when I get back to you.
I get it.
Oh my God.
I have those people.
Oh gosh. And so like in the book, I'm sure you share some fun stories and some good memories of calls and things like that. Is there a call from the book that you'd like to share with us to give someone a little taste of what
I would, especially because you're a police dispatcher.
Okay.
Excuse me.
No problem.
So when I was in police dispatcher training, I had this great trainer. She was amazing. We have rounds. We have rounds. Okay. 1 month is round 1. The second month is round 2, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
And you should certify by round 3.
Okay.
So I believe it's round 2. I believe she was my round 2 trainer. And I'm in the county. So I've got the sheriffs and I've got a couple of town police departments.
Okay.
And they've got a van that has been stealing stuff from a location, and the van takes off. And the caller gives us the license plate, and it's HHM, and for the sake of whatever, it's 1234. HHM 1234. Okay. So as I know, there's the alphabet, so that when you say it over the air, they understand the letters and you're not slurring them. Where H would be what? What would H be?
Henry.
And M, what would M be?
Mary.
Right.
I was like, now, did
I panicked. And I said,
on the air?
On the air. I said, Harry, instead of Henry. Now, there's no chance I'm saying Mary.
Oh my
because
goodness.
I've said Harry. So it's that I said monkey.
Harry monkey.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh my gosh.
So my trainer, because I'm pretty much on my own at this point, my trainer leans over and goes, "Did you just say Harry? Pause, monkey." So I'm like, yeah, I did.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what's worse, Harry monkey or Harry Mary, I mean,
they're both bad. There's not a win. There's not a win in that one. And you know how police sometimes, at least in our county, when you say something that's ridiculous, they click the mic. Well, that went on for like 20 minutes.
That is hilarious.
Harry monkey. They did catch the van.
Was there a Harry monkey inside of it?
I think I went to break by then.
Oh my gosh.
But
I'm done.
Look, I still laugh. So I was typing when I'm writing this book, right? I'm laughing. That's that's a funny story. So anyway, that's a pretty good one.
That is
I
hilarious.
have them. I have the stories like that mostly
Oh my God.
within the book, so that you enjoy the reading while
Yeah.
you figure out the balance.
Oh my gosh, that's so and it's fun for those who don't realize, like, when you go out on the air, like, the world can hear it. Like, anyone with a scanner, if the FBI is listening in on your channel, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, they they all
anyone
hear it.
there are probably a lot of people out there who heard "Harry, Harry Monkey" that Philip is not aware of and will never be aware of because and we're even like, our radio waves are monitored usually by a, whoever patrols the radio waves, to make sure you're not swearing on the air and stuff like.
Yeah,
They probably wrote that down. Like, I don't know if that qualifies as fine.
it's
Harry,
not
Harry
obnoxious
Monkey.
because he said monkey and not Mary.
That is a great one. Well,
Yeah,
I am very excited to read all the stories in this book.
thank you, thank you.
How do you feel that this job has changed you? I mean, you went from this, courtroom, powder blue suit situation where it's very, a formal setting to the wild, wild west, essentially, I would say. I mean, we're in dispatch, it's kind of, you live in the gray area. You know what I mean? You live
It's
in the
it's
gray.
it's a great question because the truth is at the time I didn't want to leave my job at Kodak. I
Yeah.
loved everything I did at Kodak, and I didn't think I could find work satisfaction again. And I started this job, and to be honest, from day one until I certified, uh, I didn't think I was going to make it. It's hard. It's
Mhm.
very hard. And now, 13 years later, it's probably the best job I've ever had. It's the most fulfilling job I've ever had. And when I go home at the end of the day, when you figure that, let's say 15 out of 16 calls are bullshit, right?
Mhm.
That 16th call that you were a part of, um, you feel good or you feel fulfilled
Mhm.
depending on the outcome, where you made a difference. You made a difference somehow. You got emergency responders out there quick, or you were able to talk a suicidal person down
Mhm.
until responders got on scene. I've had a ton of calls where when I leave work, I feel like good, like
Mhm.
I really helped people today, people.
Mhm.
And you don't get to do that in a lot of jobs. In
Mhm.
this job, when I leave work, I feel that way, that I do. I help them,
Mhm.
so I'm
Yeah,
happy. I'm
that's
fortunate.
awesome.
I,
Yeah.
I'm thankful for the job that I have.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I do want to circle back a little bit because I do think a lot of folks that, tune into me initially are folks who are like trying to get into the field and they're trying to pass Criticall and go through the process and they're looking for that information. And I think one thing I tell people is once you get into the door, like, it's tough. This training is no joke. It usually lasts a very long time. I mean, I'm still in probation at my new department. It's 18-month probation, after you get through training or I'm sorry, within training, included training, 18-month probation. I mean, it is a long process. When I was at
Right.
SAC, I pretty much trained up until I was on probation. I had academy, I had call taking, and then I had 2 weeks of radio academy, and then I went radio training up until I was cleared. And I mean, it pretty much took 18 months. It's kind of a standard there.
Yeah.
And for folks who are getting into this line of work, they passed the Criticall, they passed the background, they got all the way up that hill, and now they got to settle into the training aspect. Do you have any memory of like how you got through that or anything you did to kind of help that process on the hard days? Because there will be hard days.
Well, going just back with training,
Mhm.
studying, and I'm not the best studier. I'm
Mhm.
not the most studious person. I read So like this year, I'm on goal to read 108 books for the year, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's a lot of books.
That's a lot of books. I try to get like 1 or 2 a month, and I
One or
think I'm
two
a
a
great
month's
reader.
good. I read nonstop. I read not. But with all that reading, you would think that studying comes easy, and it doesn't. And learning all of the um, number systems, all of each event has its own abbreviation, and learning all of those and what they are, and the studying was nonstop for 4 months, 5 months, a full year, probably a full year of constant studying where I did not believe I was going to make it. So if for new people or people just getting in, I would say study even after the fact to make sure that you're comfortable, because your decisions, your choices are going to impact the lives of people in emergency situations. Study, definitely study.
For sure. And I mean, it's so true when you say that the decisions we make, and because I remember like when I first started, and I got like my first hot call, and I just remember the that like, and you just kind of, and I remember my trainer, I like hear it, and then I like freeze up, everything clenches, and then my trainer just goes type, and I like hit the thing and I start typing, and now I get a hot call and I'm like, all right, what direction do they go? It's just like
I do this now.
Comfortability.
So what's going on?
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking.
What? They hit them with what? Are they still there hitting them? Oh, okay, they're not there anymore. Like, but compared to like initially, but I think it is a comfort thing. I never really thought about describing it that way. The more comfortable I got with the way my department does things, the policies and the language, and the more quickly I was able to ascertain what's going on.
Right.
What call type I needed to drop it as. And as a radio dispatcher, how many units I'm sending, are we starting fire? Are we, all the little nuances that come with emergency situations.
Right.
And I think, the comfort level of knowing how it, and even laterally, like there was a lot of like imposter syndrome because I was like, I swear I was a good dispatcher at Sacramento. And now I'm like, do I know how to do this job? Like, I don't know. It was just because you're learning a whole new system.
Yeah.
And so getting comfortable. And now again, I'm comfortable again. And I'm like, oh yeah, I am a good dispatcher. Like,
But it takes time to get to that comfortable level.
Yeah.
When I first walked on the floor and I saw people knitting blankets, reading books, watching iPad TV shows, I'm like, oh, this will be simple. No, not till you get to that point. And it's a long time from starting to that point where you could be comfortable.
Yeah, I definitely learned how many people in dispatch centers knit blankets. Yeah. So if you know a dispatcher, I'm sure they know someone who can make a blanket for you if you need it to happen.
I bought blankets because they do great jobs.
Yeah, they're like pristine, just amazing. You can do half your Christmas shopping in a dispatch center. Baby showers, Snake me a baby blanket. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Talented people.
That's so funny. So how do you just piggybacking off of that? How do you feel that the job has changed you? Going on. I mean, you're still in it, obviously, but like for me, I always like double, triple check my locks. Like I always lock my doors up. My fiance's last up, and I'm like, why isn't the extra chain on? I don't. We're vulnerable. We've been vulnerable for hours. Just So
I'm the same. I don't take my security for granted at all. I got my pit bull mix who's afraid of shadows, but no one else knows that.
No one knows it, yeah.
But the same thing. It has changed me because, well, okay, all right. Let me branch a little on this because it's important. I think a lot of people, they call 911 for what they believe is an emergency, you know? And unfortunately, a lot of the times it's not. You know, the stub toe that is trouble breathing because they're going, you're not really.
Wait, is that a thing?
That's a thing. So now we're sending an ALS ambulance, which is, you know, advanced life support for the trouble breathing because they're.
So do they just get like a courtesy shock for
No, they'll tie up a paramedic for their stub toe.
That's wild. Yeah.
It is. It's unfortunate.
It is.
And then you have these types of calls that take away from the resources that are there, you know.
Yeah.
So it changes me in that I try to be aware of what is an emergency. What is an emergency?
Yeah.
And again, for a lot of people, at their time of trouble, they're in an emergency. Like when the guy called me because he left a hockey game because it went into overtime and he had to work in the morning and needed the final score.
Stop.
For him,
you're different out there in New York now.
So I tried to be sympathetic and I Googled it and I said, yeah, they won. But people, we had, so you're in California, right?
Yeah.
All right. I'm in New York. We had an earthquake. You probably never heard of these before. We had an earthquake. It was like a 0.5 on the Richter scale.
Okay.
There may have been some lawn furniture that tipped.
Oh my.
Potentially. We went into queue, like 300 calls, and people said this. Hey, we just had an earthquake. And I'd be like, yes. Do you need police, fire, ambulance? No. I just thought I'd call and tell you. What are you calling for?
Yeah, I think we have a whole service that lets us know about earthquakes.
Hundreds of calls that we got to call back. And they're like, yeah, I think we had an earthquake. Yeah, do you need police, fire, ambulance? No, I just was calling to tell you.
That's hilarious.
A lot of people need to be cognizant of calling for actual emergencies.
This is true. And you know, we are not the Googles. Like, we do not know everything. You know, I mean, don't tell my fiance that, but we do not know. Like, we had Fleet Week here last month, where the like Blue Angels will come fly and do. And so one day I was actually working up day shift. I was working overtime. I just came in for a couple hours, and we had some fighter jets flying over the city. And they flew a couple times, and someone called 911. They're like, there's military planes fly. Do you know what's going on? I'm like, no. The military did not advise my little police department about their flight plan or their schedule or what they're doing. Or like, no, I have no idea. And they're like, well, one person was like, well, that's concerning. I'm like, is it? No one's shooting at them while they're flying. I think we're good. Like, right. I don't know.
We had a Netflix show. It was a car racing show. It was like I wish I could remember the name, but it was a Netflix show, and it was filmed at Kodak on their property, and they had put up fences with block fences so nobody could see in. Mm-hmm. And I was driving to work one day, and I'm like, what are all these lights at Kodak? So the phone calls start coming in. Because they filmed in the middle of the night race cars with whining racing engines, right? With helicopters overhead filming, and it sounded. People were calling, and it's like 2 a.m, and they're like, "What's going on?" And it sounded like a war zone. You heard engines and racing engines and helicopters and lights all over the place. It's a Netflix show. Yeah, well, I'm calling the mayor. Okay, call the mayor.
Yeah, please call them. Don't call us.
Netflix didn't call us and tell us they were going to be filming. It was
Yeah.
a pretty cool show, but in a residential area.
Yeah, that's wild. And that is a lot of I think a misconception with the folks, the citizens is like you call the police department and you want the police department to fix the middle of the night show or the leaf blowers, and it's like, well, it's too early, and it's like we deal with crime.
Right.
All these are city ordinances you are upset about.
Right.
So you're like, you guys aren't doing anything about. I'm like, it's not my guys or my gals or my office. It's actually your elected officials. So go yell at them.
Yeah, go yell at them.
Because the police, we only, we enforce whatever the city or the laws are.
Right.
And if we are upset about what the city and laws are, we have to go to the folks who are in control of making and changing those. And it is not our boots on the grounds, folks. It's not our dispatchers. If it meets criteria, we send them. And if you're upset about the criteria that's set, you got to talk to someone else about it, because it is not something we can change, especially mid-shift on a Monday.
At 2 in the morning.
Or at 2 in the morning.
At 2 in the morning.
We're filming a Netflix show.
Filming a Netflix show.
Vibes. That is wonderful. I mean, and I imagine that your guys' call volume out there in Rochester is just wild.
We average, I want to say it's 1.7 million calls a year. So it's a pretty busy city. If you Google crime Rochester, New York, we've made the news multiple times. We are up well over 80 murders for the year. And per capita, there's 200,000 people in the city of Rochester.
Wow.
Per capita, we're worse than Chicago.
Yeah. Jeez Louise. How's your guys' staffing over there? I mean, staffing obviously historically is a problem.
We are anemic.
Oh.
We have brought in a lot of classes. Right now, we have a class of 20 that just hit the floor for training. Hopefully 10.
Yeah.
10 will survive.
Those they'll be. We're now the Hunger Games has begun.
That's what it is. It comes down to the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we just have people leaving faster than we can fill holes, and but our management is working hard to bring people in.
Yeah.
It's just finding the right people that can sustain the requirements.
Yeah. So if you're out in that area, Rochester, New York, apply. They are accepting.
Always.
What does your guys' academy look like? What's the kind of gist of your guys' training cycle?
It's a 1 month in classroom training, and then a 3 month on the floor training. So it's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's not too bad.
And do you guys do call taking first and then radio, or do you?
Yeah, we certify call takers first. And then if you're hired as a dispatcher, then you go into dispatching class.
Okay. Perfect.
Which is another month, and then 3 to 4 months training.
So you guys have 2 foots in the door then. You can do call taking, or you can do dual dispatcher.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, well that's cool, because I've always been dual trained at both my agencies. So we were required to do both. But my sheriff department in SAC, they were like that. They split them. You either were a call taker or you were a dispatcher who could do both.
We can have that as well too. You could just be hired as a call taker.
Yeah.
Or you could just be hired as a dispatcher.
Oh,
but you tend to learn both.
Yeah, you have to learn both. I mean, emergencies happen, folks. You might think you're working this, and then you get pulled to that instantly.
Yeah.
So.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on with me today. And I'm just going to ask you the last question that I always ask everybody, which is, what advice would you give to someone who is considering this career as a dispatcher?
My advice would be, if you're definitely going to do it and you're going to take it serious, study, learn everything, learn all the policies, learn all the procedures as best you can, and learn from each of the people who train you in their own way, take what they give you and then make it your own. That would be my advice.
Awesome. Well, Phil, again, thank you so much for coming on with me. I really appreciate it. Really excited to get a chance to read your book.
Thank you.
And for those who are listening to this podcast and have been following me on Instagram, we did give a giveaway for Philip's book for 3 Kindle copies of the book, the electronic versions of it. So if you're one of the lucky folks to have gotten those copies, definitely let us know how you liked it. Tell a friend, buy a copy to send to a friend. And if you don't already follow Phillip, make sure to follow him on Instagram. Any other social medias that they can follow you on?
Instagram, Facebook, probably the 2 biggest. TikTok. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
All righty. I'll include all the links to all the social medias and the link to the book. So you guys don't have to go diving for it. It'll be right there for you. And again, thank you for offering those 3 free opportunities for folks to dive into the book. I really appreciate it. And I know they do as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. I'll be right back with you. Okay.
Okay.
All right, everybody. That was another wonderful episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. Phillip, dispatcher, author, doing it all, living their best life, really embracing the world of dispatch and sharing it with the masses in their most recent book. And definitely go get a copy of it. Again, Nothing Good Happens After Midnight, Confessions of a 911 Dispatcher. If you don't want to check the link in the bio, just plug that in on Amazon and it'll pop right up for you. Of course, like, subscribe, tell a friend. Until next time, stay raspy, everybody. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Let's Talk Dispatch. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at The Raspy Dispatcher, follow us on Instagram, and check out Let's Talk Dispatch anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'll see you next time, and stay raspy.